So let's look at the difference between finding an unknown length that's a hypotenuse versus a leg. So our first step to doing either or is to label the sides as A, B, and C. So let's go through and label them on both triangles. Find the right angles, and the side across from it label C, the other two sides A and B. In the next example, do the same thing. Find your right angle. The side opposite that is C. Label the other two sides as A and B. So that's our first step. So the first step is identical. The second step is to write the Pythagorean theorem formula. So let's see what that looks like. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And for this one, the same thing. So the second step is identical as well. So let's look at the third step. Third step is to substitute. You're substituting your values in. So over here, we plugged in 5 for A and 12 for B. So we have 5 squared plus 12 squared equals C squared. And when we're finding the leg, you have A squared plus 6 squared equals 10 squared. So there's a difference in this step right here. The difference is what's unknown. Here, the A squared's unknown. Here, the C squared's unknown. So this is going to affect our fourth step, how we go through and solve the equations. So let's walk through how to solve the equations. So let's start with when you're solving for the hypotenuse. When you're solving for the hypotenuse, you're going to evaluate your squares. 5 squared is 25. And 12 squared is 144. Then you have equals C squared. Then you add those two together. 25 plus 144 is 169. And you have C squared. And then you would take the square root of both sides. So the square root, the square root. The square root of 169 is 13. So C would be 13. Now on the other side, let's see how it's different. So when we're finding a leg length, let's see what we have to do. Well, first evaluate the squares. So we have A squared plus 6 squared is 36. 10 squared is 100. Here we have to go through and subtract. The opposite of adding, we have to undo adding 36, so we're going to subtract 36. Here we're subtracting 36. The 36 cancel, bring down our A squared, and then do our subtraction over here. 100 minus 36 is 64. Now we're ready to take our square root. Let's take our square root. And the square root of 64 is 8. So in this example, the answer is 8. Here it's 13. So how these two problems differ is that for this problem, we added these squares together in this step. Oops. We added those together there. In this problem, after we evaluated the square roots, we subtracted in this step to get the A squared by itself, because that A squared was not on a side by itself. C squared was on a side by itself here. Okay, so make sure when you're going through and solving these, you're finding a hypotenuse versus a leg. There's a difference in the procedure once you get down to the solving step. Okay, when you're finding a hypotenuse, you just add the squares together and then take the square root. When you're finding a leg, you subtract. You subtract the squares and then take the square root. So there is a difference, so be very cautious when finding them. Make sure you note what you're finding, a hypotenuse or a leg at the beginning.